Creed style. Alright, next up is one I'm actually very excited to recently own, and that's Wet. It's a Bethesda shooter for the console. I can't remember if it's first person or third person, but it's like a very gory, over the top kind of Quentin Tarantino style of kind of like a movie game, almost like the badass superhero outlaw person. So I'm hoping to get into it. It's apparently a lot of fun, so looking to crack this one open soon. Next up is Alice Madness Returns. This one has a very unique premise. I've always wanted to pick up and play this one. I picked it up recently. Haven't started playing it yet, but it's, I'm pretty sure, a platformer with some puzzle mechanics and some hack and slash elements to it. Not 100% on that, but the story definitely looks interesting. Our next up is CSI Crime Scenes Investigation Fatal Conspiracy. This one is one of those kind of point-and-click Telltale or Heavy Rain style of games where you're kind of just guiding your character along and kind of playing like mini games almost to kind of solve the mystery. I haven't played through it myself, but I heard it's kind of faithful to the show, and I enjoy some CSI from now and then. Alright, next up is Deadpool. This is one that I heard it was pretty funny and faithful to the character, and the combat was actually pretty decent. From what I gather, it's a hack and slash game, and all these over-the-top hack and slash games I'm starting to really enjoy, so hopefully this one lives up to my expectations. Alright, next up is Blur. I really want to play this game, but currently my disc has a scratch in it and it's not working perfectly. So hopefully I can get it buffed out and I can actually fully add this to the collection. Alright, so now we're getting into the games I have actually played. So all these games past here, I have at least played and tried. I think there's only 2 that are in the collection that I haven't played. That's just because they're games I really don't see me playing anytime soon, but they're just in the collection. So this is the Mass Effect trilogy. One of my favorite series of all time. Honestly, this trilogy is amazing. Great third-person shooter RPG. Combat mechanics are pretty good, and the story is just amazing, going from one game to the other, and having all the other characters develop over time. The first game, I'd give an 8. The combat is a little weak, but the story is great. Second game, I'd give it a 10. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I think it's the perfect mix of a great story and really good combat. And 3, I give an 8 for the opposite reason.
They be fucking bitch.
I think the combat is really good, probably best in the series, but the story is kind of weak and
be able to log into
awful. All right, next up is Aliens: Colonial Marines. Honestly, not that great of a shooter. The AI is awful, and the gunplay is not the greatest. If you're fans of the Alien franchise, you might get a kick out of it, but otherwise than that, I'd stay away from it. I'd probably give it a 4. All right, next up is Anarchy Reigns. This one falls as probably my biggest hidden gem on the console. It's a great hack and slash game made by Platinum Games. Very over the top. The art style in this game is great. The story's fun, and the characters are really enjoyable, and has a really good comedic element that Platinum Games is really known for. If you like flashy, over the top hack and slash games, you'll really enjoy this game. I'd give it an 8. Alright, next up is Aquapaza. Kind of a slightly above average 2D fighter on the console. It's an exclusive, so it's kind of cool to own. But I was just on a big BlazBlue kick when I bought this, so I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. It's an above average fighting game. Alright, next up is Assassin's Creed 2. Hailed as probably the best in the Assassin's Creed franchise. I'd probably say it's my second or third favorite. I think Black Flag takes the cake for me, but a really solid Assassin's Creed game. Decent stealth mechanics, and the story is pretty good in this game. I'd give it an 8. Alright, next up is Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Honestly, very short campaign, kind of lackluster, but this game introduced the multiplayer, which is kind of like a hide-and-seek assassination-style multiplayer. I really enjoyed it and got heavily into it, so it gets a 7.8 out of me just because of the multiplayer, basically. Alright, next up is Assassin's Creed Revelations. I think one of the better stories in an Assassin's Creed game. I did enjoy the Ezio Altair combo, so I give it a 7.8. I put it on kind of the same level as Brotherhood. Alright, next up is Assassin's Creed 3. Honestly, probably one of the slower paced ones, I would say. The beginning is very, very slow, but it picks up near the end. I enjoyed it still. I didn't think it was a bad game. I give it a 7.5, but it's definitely one of the weaker Assassin's Creeds. Alright, next up is Batman Arkham Asylum. Honestly, my favorite of the Arkham games. I think the story, the interactions with all the
Don't get my stuff, you fucking bitch.
The introduction of the combat is
fucking
fantastic
creepy
in this
bastard.
game. And I think, honestly, the more linear paced and straightforward kind of story-driven version they went for in this game really suits my style, and I think the style of the game the best. So for me, this is a 9.5, one of my favorite games on the console. Our next up is Batman Arkham City. For those of you who don't know, I didn't touch on it on Arkham Asylum, but these games are beat-em-up games, so button masher beat-em-up games that kind of have some combos built in and some really flashy, cool elements, and interact with a lot of the main villains from the Batman franchise. If you're a big fan of Batman, I would recommend getting it into these. This one, for me, not my favorite. I think it's the second best in the series. Still an amazing game. I give it an 8.5. I just don't enjoy the open world as much. Alright, next up is Batman Arkham Origins. This has always kind of been a controversial take on my channel. I think it's the weakest out of the Arkham games. I don't really enjoy the story of this game too much, and the interaction with the characters are kind of weak compared to the other games, in my opinion. So I give this game a 7. It's still fun, though. Alright, now we're getting into the Battlefield games. This is Bad Company. I didn't get this game when the multiplayer was actually active, but I actually really enjoyed the story. I think the Bad Company gets the kind of squad mechanics right and the story of the characters right in this game. And the cast of characters you play with is a lot of fun. So I give this game like a 7.9. And then we got Battlefield Bad Company 2. Also didn't get this game when the multiplayer was active, but again, the story was really well done. I think the combat and kind of the system of the UI was updated pretty big in this game compared to the first game, in my opinion. So I'd give it an 8 just for the upgrades. Next up, we got Battlefield 3. I did play this a bit when the multiplayer was out. I was more of a COD kid, to be honest. But enjoyed this game. Story was a little weaker than the other two, but still fun. Kind of like a COD campaign where you just kind of play through it. It has some good gun mechanics and an okay story. I gave this game a 7.5. Alright, next up, this is the game that actually got me into hack and slash and beat 'em up games, and that's Bayonetta. Honestly, Platinum Games has become one of my favorite developers, and this was my introduction to them. Really fast paced, really good hack and slash mechanics and beat 'em up mechanics. The story is great. Bayonetta herself and the side characters in this game are just a lot of fun, and really the comedy elements of these games are really underrated. And really the interactions of the characters really help kind of elevate the game from a really, really good hack and slash game to a really good hack and slash game with a great story. So I'd give it a 9. Alright, next up is Beyond Two Souls. This is the same developers, I think, that made Heavy Rain. It's one of those like point and click kind of mini game style of games that's very story driven. Honestly, pretty slow compared to Heavy Rain. Not really my cup of tea till the end where it gets interesting. So I give it a 7.5. Alright, next up is The Big Two. For those of you who have not played this game, it's basically think Mario Baseball, but with real life MLB players. It's not as arcadey as the Mario games where you get like the power-ups, like the shells and stuff like that.